You're listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast, celebrating hunting dog heritage, competition, and community. United Kennel Club has been the hunting dog sports home for coonhounds, beagles, retrievers, pointers, cur, feist, and more for over 125 years. Yeah, that's actually going to cover a dog-related offense or a handler-related offense, both. So I kind of like that. So starting with 6A, we talked in some of the other segments, we talked about the rules that cover the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think we could consider Rule 3 points will be plussed as the good. Rule 4 talks about all the minuses, so that's kind of the bad. And we get to Rule 6 here. You're going to be out of the game here, so this is kind of the ugly, I guess, so to speak. And there's quite a bit there.
Yeah, it's ugly unless you don't like hunting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you've hunted long enough, you've a lot of these rules here under Section 6 at one time or another have probably ended your night.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes some of those nights are not the nights you needed it to happen on.
There's several here that I see that I've that me and my dog have
had
infractions on.
Yep, I think there's quite a few that have ended my night, and I know of even a couple in the world hunt that ended my night that came out of this part of the rule book right here, and rightfully so. All right, starting with 6A, if a dog has accumulated a total of 400 minus points, that's going to end my night right there. It doesn't matter how many plus points I have, even if I have the most plus points. If I have accumulated 400 points, I'm just done. No matter, nothing else matters at that point. About as straight up as can be. I don't know. I say I don't know. I would be a dummy to say that has never happened to me, because I'm sure it has. But I probably, more times than not, I pulled the old Mackie Mans and got out of the way before it got that bad.
Right. Yeah.
I say that, and that's all in good fun, because Mackie Mans is an old blue tick guy from our area, and he was one of the guys that he's still to this day, I think it was the first to get out of a cast or withdraw his dog from a cast if it took a little minus, or especially early on in the hunt. I always thought, man, Mackie,
A lot can happen.
I think a lot can happen. Yeah.
Look how long Rule 6 is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's pretty straightforward. Even if your dog has 900 plus, if you accrue 400 minus at any point, no matter what, you're
even
out.
if you're by yourself, it doesn't matter.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Straightforward. Rule 6B is going to tell us for fighting, your dog's going to be scratched for fighting or attempting to fight when off leash during the hunt, including any timeout periods. And before we go any further, do you want to maybe give us a definition of attempting to fight? Because I see an asterisk there.
Yep, right next to the word fight, there's an asterisk, which says this. When we go into section 16, looking at definitions for those, 1, the dog must be showing aggressive behavior, and 2, must be interfering with another dog or dogs during the authority of the judge. I think we'll probably explain that in further detail.
Yeah, a couple things to notate here. Just this first sentence, when off leash during the hunt. So this is something that changed relatively recently. It was in the 2020 rule change that little caveat was added in there that the dog had to be off leash. And, a lot of that had to do with issues at the truck. Dogs who may be territorial about their truck or their dog box, or just not maybe territorial, but just kind of weird around their truck or their home. They spend a lot of time in there. And you can see some issues in there sometimes, but this rule is telling us if they're on the leash, they're protected from being scratched for fighting. And that includes timeout periods. That's also in the first sentence there. So
yeah, and I think that's pretty straightforward, really, and it's as simple as that. Don't read more into it than what's there. If they're off leash, that's the only time they can be scratched for fighting or attempting to fight, and also only during the hunt. So if they're handled at a tree, for instance, and you're shining the tree, they get in a fight with a dog that comes by or running by or whatever, they can't be scratched when they're on leash or in a dog box or anything like that, And so yeah, so that kind of covers that, including any in timeout periods.
The next sentence here is going to tell us when the aggressive dog is known, scratch the aggressor only. If not known, scratch dogs involved.
Yeah, I think that's something we have dealt with, that I have in my 20 years, that's often there's a lot of debate about that, and there's a lot of oftentimes that brings up questions when you have this situations. It's probably one of the most next to 5B, maybe one of the situations that creates more questions or disagree. We shouldn't say disagreement, maybe debates or what have you. Sometimes it involves emotions because if my dog's fighting or your dog's on top of mine. Boy, that's not I don't like to see that. Your dog's on top of mine, and I don't know, and if it's the other way around, doggone it, man, this is not good, or what have you. Or just a dog's fighting period is just not, and it happens sometimes, and it doesn't really matter. Not a whole lot we can do. They're dogs, and sometimes a dog that's it even happens sometimes when you've never seen the dog do this before, or it's just not common for the dog to be temperamental like this and end up in a dog fight. You don't know what's going on, and hey, you deal with what you have, and unfortunately this happens. Sometimes they're animals, and if they're fighting, we got to do the right thing. And it says this: when the aggressive dog is known, the aggressor is considered to be the one that started the fight, and they scratch the aggressor only. If not known, scratch the dogs involved. And the reason is reason for just if it's not known, and this is also what is discouraging to somebody. Their dog's in a fight might be at the bottom of the pile, and your dog's not like that, and here we've got another dog that is just really tore my dog up or what have you, and it's not a good scene, and it's kind of an emotional thing or whatever. You allow emotions to get into it. You don't like to see it, and you think it's just not right, but I'm also going to get rode up for fighting. Well, here's the intent of this rule: that even that my dog isn't an aggressor, doesn't have temperament issues, but got caught up with a dog that does or whatever. It's felt better to report both dogs to make sure we get the one that deserves it.
Sure.
And the odds in UKC's rule is that a dog that is reported for fighting 3 times within a 2-year period of each other is going to be a dog that's going to get suspended from being able to participate any longer for 2 years anyways. And if a dog that was just that also got taken down in it because we don't know who started it. If your dog doesn't have temperament issues, that 3 scratch thing is not going to come into play. It just doesn't happen that way. Right. You're not going to get 3 incidents like that in 2 years. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. That I've ever been aware of. Somebody's going to make the argument it has, but realistically. So, and then it says the last sentence says this: withdrawing to avoid dog being reported for fighting is not permitted. And what that means is just simply you have a dog fight, and now I say, hey, let me just withdraw. I'll just withdraw.
Right.
No, you've got the infraction already. So,
yeah, there you go. I think you covered that pretty well. And we can move on now to 6C, and I can read that for you here. 6C tells us...
Let's add one more thing to this fighting or attempting to fight. We talked about the definition here. It has an asterisk next to fighting. So the dog has to be, one, showing aggressive behavior and interfering with another dog. So obviously if you've got a dog down or whatever, that's interfering with another dog. Mm-hmm. So you might have aggressive behavior. Aggressive behavior can be a bunch of things that's considered to be aggressive, whether it's just hacking up or growling or face barking another dog. But in doing so, it also has to interfere with this other dog from treeing, or let's say guarding the tree would be one, keeping a dog from coming into the tree. That's interfering with another dog. But just because, let's say a dog's face barking a little bit or standing there growling at another dog a little bit, and it depends on how that other dog reacts to it. If the other dog reacts and runs off from it, then that's considered interfering. And it really, really depends a whole lot on how that other dog reacts. It's as simple as that. Just one time it might be growling at a dog, and that other dog keeps right on treeing. no harm, no foul, really.
Right.
It hasn't met that second criteria. It hasn't interfered. Whereas another dog, it might be doing the same thing in it, and that dog does react to it differently and
Sure.
takes off, quits
Absolutely.
treeing and leaves or whatever. So that's the difference.
Yep. Absolutely.
Meet both of those criteria without actually grabbing another dog or
Actually
fighting or
fighting.
attempting to fight. Attempting to fight. That's the definition of attempting to fight.
Yep.
All right, there you go.
Yeah. So next rule 6C is going to tell us dogs will be scratched for failing to make an attempt to hunt within any 15 consecutive scorecard minutes. Sometimes I guess really it's pretty straightforward here. Attempting to hunt, that means they need to be away from you, actually in the woods attempting to hunt, and not just walking with the cast or standing by the cast. Really the only ever questions I get about this one is about the consecutive and about if calling a timeout or something in that situation would break the 15 minutes. And in that case, actually, you're just going to put a timeout on that 15, and whenever you start hunt time back up, or you're moving spots or what have you, you're cut loose, you'll start back right where you were. So say there's 8.5 minutes gone on that 15, you cut loose and the dog's still standing with you, decides not to go hunting, you're going to start right back where you were with 8.5 minutes gone.
Yep. It's pretty self-explanatory right there, other than what consecutive means, and you just explained what it means. D, 6D, bitches smelling strong enough to attract dogs, or a dog that is just bad to bother other dogs. Bother has an asterisk next to it. I'll let you look that up under section 16. So yeah, that means females that are in heat just enough to attract other dogs or whatever. Obviously those dogs need to go.
Yeah.
And then, or a dog that is just bad to bother other dogs. Sometimes you have male dogs that have, hey, frankly, you can have dogs that were just used for breeding purposes or whatever. They kind of got that on their mind. They're just still kind of got that on their brain and more interested in keeping, following other dogs around this and that or what have you, So just it can also go the other way, but more times than not, it's going to be the female that's going to be the one that's going to go if there's, and you know what, when a female comes in season, they will have some attraction to male dogs longer than some would like to or wish they did, put it that way.
Yeah.
And the other thing I will say about this, that I see this happen sometimes in officials, this is for you officials, don't get caught up in bringing the dog back to the headquarters and get another male dog in to check this female with a different male dog. That's not what the issue was. The issue wasn't between this male dog you're bringing in and da-da-da-da-da. It was with another dog out there. So you don't recreate that. We talked about fighting a little bit ago, where there's a question on fighting where we put dogs up on a tree and just sit there and watch them to see what, we put a couple dogs, see what happens. No, deal with what happened, not with what you're trying to make happen.
Sure.
And this is the exact example of that. And you hear that sometimes. And whenever you hear that, well, the official had us bring in another dog, no.
Hey, real quick, I'll define bother looking at Rule 16 here, the definitions. Just says displaying breeding type behavior.
That's right. Yep.
You've kind of did that. And honestly, if you have a dog out there, you mentioned the female side of it. If you have a male dog out there that's kind of got that on its mind and trying to ride some different dogs, it can get a lot worse than just that. Mm-hmm. That's whenever you can get a kind of some disputes between dogs as well.
Yep. Yeah, you would think you should, these rules, the title of them, they have the word honor in them. And so they work pretty doggone well unless we just don't respect them.
Yeah.
If we have no respect for the rules, and this falls right in with it. If I have a male dog that I might have used for breeding or whatever, he's kind of bad he kind of wants to hump other dogs, males, female, doesn't really matter what. Come on. Either if that's the case and it happens, then you know what, my night should end and I should be man enough to take me out of it instead of for you to take your female out of it. And boy, we go to the next dropper. If it's not yours and it happens another one, doggone it. Now it's too late. We already sent an innocent party home, and but so it goes both ways there too.
That's right.
But more times than not, it's going to end up being the female.
Yeah.
May not be aware of it that it's that time, but maybe we know as well.
Right. And now we can take a look at Rule 6E under dog-related scratching offense, and it's going to tell us for delaying competition of cast for 1 hour after timeout is called during the hunt in accordance with Rule 7.
It's a good one here.
Yeah, it's a
good one.
tough way to go, but that's the rule. And you've actually mentioned it a little bit, or maybe not in this episode, but if you go back to where we talked about Rule 1, we talked about it in the deadline portion of it.
What I meant by one, yeah, it's a bad deal when it happens, because sometimes you get dogs get out of pocket. We have to go handle dogs, and for delaying completion of cast, the cast has to wait on us, or if my dog is, I have to go handle my dog. Should always the judge should always make sure everybody's aware where the meeting spot is going to be, because that's where they mess up, and that's where things can get real muddy if that wasn't made clear before everybody's sent off. Sometimes you think it's not going to be an issue, and they're going to be back in a little bit. Before you know it, the dog got away from them, and now they don't know where the rest of the cast is or where they were supposed to be. As a judge, just make sure you have a meeting spot, and they have no choice but to wait on a cast member for at least 1 hour. Otherwise, before they can continue on. Now, the other thing I want to bring up, a lot of times where this rule is misapplied, this 1 hour deal only applies during the hunt when timeout is called. It's the only time the 1 hour delay of cast might be called. There's other situations when you have to wait on a handler or what have you, maybe at entry time or whatever, or coming back to the club or this or that or what have you. This 1 hour doesn't apply to every situation when you're waiting on somebody. Right. The only time it does is here when you call timeout during the hunt, and right there it is. So, anything else?
I think that's it on
All right. So, the next one is Rule 6F. Dogs are going to be scratched in champion division casts, that's night champions and grands, for running, treeing, or molesting off game. Off game must be seen, it says in parentheses, and they will be scratched if they do any of these 3 things, running, treeing, or molesting, during hunting time, including any timeout periods prior to the expiration of hunt time. Exception 5B in parentheses. And we go back to the episode where we talked about it, 5B, where even champions that come into the tree after the judge arrives, there's off game there, 5B takes precedence. But that's the only time it does. So in here, if dogs run, tree, or molest off game during the hunt time, and including any timeout periods, you called timeout during the hunt, and dogs end up treeing, running, treeing, or molesting off game, they're still subjected to that. So, and then you got anything to add to that?
No, I think you got that.
So there you go. And then it goes on to say, in the event the off game is a squirrel seen in a tree, and 2, the tree is an obvious den tree, refer to Rule 5D. And that's going to say to circle that. And we talked about that, where if they run a track in or whatever, there's a squirrel in the tree. It's also a den tree or has a nest in it or something like that, that the coon might have went in the nest or went in the hole and ran the squirrel out.
That's right.
So that would be an exception to that. And then again, it mentions that birds are not considered off game.
Yeah. Next one here is going to be Rule 6G. And it says that dogs are going to be scratched for running or molesting livestock. That's a good rule that helps our farmers. Our farmers let us hunt on them, so we better make sure our dogs don't mess with theirs.
Yeah, that's right. So that can be anything. There are any cattle, baying cattle, or bunnies in a cage, or chickens, or anything like that. They're all considered livestock. In that case, chickens are considered livestock, not birds in this case. Running tree or molesting livestock, they're going to be gone. Anything else there?
Yeah, I was going to say I recently shared an advisor column that Todd Killam wrote back in the early 90s talking about livestock compared to off game. So that might be a good advisor column to go back and read up on. So interesting stuff there in that one.
And then the last one for dog-related offenses is going to be H, which says for hunting over or under the advertised hunt time. Not sure how the dogs know that difference. Seems like that might be under handler-related offenses, but nevertheless, we've got it under the dog.
We expect a lot of our hands.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So yeah, and that means if the hunt was scheduled for 90 minutes, that means 90 minutes you hunt that, and if you hunted 60, why that's going to be a scratch or or even we can make it a lot more technical than that. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a 90-minute hunt the 90 minutes, 60 minutes hunt 60. If it's 2 hours, hunt 2. If you hunt it any other time, then that's not going to fly. You're going to be scratched for it.
exactly right.
With Eukanuba, stamina is the one difference I'm seeing. When I'm running hair up north, my dogs will put on 10, 12, 15 miles of solid running, and they just don't tire as easily or as quickly. Oftentimes, my work schedule does not allow me to have the desired physical conditioning on my dogs, but even then, as many as 25 or more miles a day of hard running is just another day in the office. To me, it's been apparent Eukanuba's 30-20 sport formula is making that difference. Eukanuba, the official performance dog nutrition partner of UKC. So yeah, there wraps up the dog-related offenses and under 6, and we're ready for handler-related offenses now.
Yeah, and the first two we're going to see here are ones that we've seen mentioned a little bit back in the minus section, the strike minus section. So we're going to see what happens in those second offenses here, if you refer back to that. But here we go. 6I is going to tell us after first minute, each dog is released. Dog must be declared struck on or before the third bark, which you talked about in that section in Rule 4. For dog not declared struck on second offense, the dog is scratched. And then in parentheses says refer to Rule 4A for the first offense. So now we find out on that second offense of this happening, where you failed to strike your dog on or before that third bark, you and your dog are heading to the truck.
That's right. It refers to Rule 4. That's going to be minus points. So the first offense, you just got here the available strike points minus. In this case, second time, each time dog is released, you didn't get the dog struck on or before the third bark second time around, you're going to be, it's going to end your night there.
Oh.
All right, second one is 6J on second offense of a handler calling the wrong dog. And there again in parentheses, it tells you to refer back to Rule 4B, which is minus points for first offense, which was you call the wrong dog on the first offense, you're going to get that position minused, and it's going to open up again. Second offense, same thing. It's going to be the end of your night and be headed home.
Yep. Moving on to Rule 6K, this tells us for use of any device used to control dog prior to cast complete and hunt time, the handler's going to be scratched. And what we're talking about here is probably telemetry systems or even a shock only system or a shock only system or any kind of system that can control your dog.
Toning or shocking, doesn't matter.
Yep. So if you use that, from the beginning of the cast to the end of the cast, including timeout periods, you could put yourself, if you're found to be doing so, you're going to be scratched from the hunt.
And another one is you hear it sometimes. Well, everybody agreed to that I could use it or whatever, and guess what? That's a rule violation. That won't hold up in a court of law here. Court of law being the official, or if a ruling needs to be made on it, won't hold up. The rule violation. And, with technology comes more and more things. We used to just have to deal with shocking units, and to begin with, they weren't a part of the tracking, a combo unit, so to speak, and now here comes the tone, and that's another controlling feature, and another one that we're well aware of that we discuss and I know is we know is being used, and that is some light stuff that dogs are being trained with. So, it just technology is good, but also brings things forth here. So, wouldn't be surprised if you're going to see a little more added to that section, other than just. But any device used to control dog prior to cast completing on time. Yep. Next one, that's a handler offense. Obviously, next one is if handler hollers at or physically abuses the dog. And I know there's several guys that, for instance, you can't yell at your dog at any time, as far as, to influence the dog or anything like, hey, come here, or, when they're out hunting or loose or what have you, out competing. And you also can't physically abuse your dog. And we hear that sometimes and see that sometimes, well, hey, this is, my dog trees off game. I'm gonna use this as an opportunity to do some training or what have you, and guess what? The rules don't allow that. And we have several folks on the suspended list that can attest to that, how that went for them when they've been reported for it. But yeah, leave it at that.
Yeah, that's 6L there.
Yep.
Move on to 6M here, and we've
L. Yeah, I said I. That's actually L. Yep.
I've heard you refer to our rule talking about putting a stationary on a dog, and here we are. Rule 6M. It tells us if handler fails to declare treat a dog obviously treeing, which in parentheses tells us is a judge's decision, for a period of 5 minutes. So the first thing I'll say is you'll notice that it's 5 minutes there. You may want to highlight that. That's the stationary time. Dog may be declared treed while 5 is running, but not after the 5 has expired. Judge must verify dog to be at a tree before it can be scratched. If the cat is in the process of shining a separate tree, time shall be canceled or not be applied to another dog. So there's a lot to unload here. Obviously, first we mentioned that the 5 minutes instead of the tree time is 3 minutes. The stationary time is 5 minutes. So that's a little bit of a difference there. So you may want to notate that. Second thing you've talked about a little bit is a judge shouldn't put the stationary on a dog if he's not 100% sure that this dog is treeing. You don't want to put the stationary on a dog if it's in a barn, in a hole, in a brush pile, in a rock pile. There's a lot of different places a dog could be besides a tree. And oftentimes it could be muffled or different things where you could make a distinction. If you have any question at all, probably err on the side of caution a little bit in that scenario. But if the 5 is running, I can declare my dog treed during that 5 minute time. If that 5 expires, I'm done. I can't declare my dog treed anymore. What's going to happen then is that the judge and the handler in the situation are going to head to where the dog is stationary at. And then if the dog is found to be treeing on a tree, you're going to be scratched from the hunt.
Mm-hmm. And you have to go verify the dog to be on a tree. But yeah, it mentions a couple times when you can cancel it or a situation, like if you're in the process of shining a separate tree. In other words, basically what that does is, so you can keep your attention on the dog that has the stationary. If you can't do that, then you should lift the stationary, So, but yeah, one other one that I've always always tried to suggest is if I'm judging and I put the stationary on a guy and essentially kind of forced him to call his dog treat and get in there and they're in a hole in the ground or in a place of refuge, I should feel pretty bad because we have a rule that allows them to go in without the dogs being called treat. So don't force them either. But this rule is intended for nothing more, nothing less than a guy using time to benefit him when a dog is treeing, but just not calling it for whatever reason. The dog needs to be treed solid, not just hitting back and forth a little bit, and it's not for that. It's for a dog that is actually treed, and for whatever reason, it's obvious that the handler is not going to call him treat until I force him to.
Yeah.
That's when you should put the time on him, and 5 minutes there, and then you go in and you have to verify the dog to be on a treat. If it's on a treat, then you scratch the dog.
Yep.
What do you do when you get in there and the dog's in a hole in the ground?
Like you said earlier,
don't have to be called treat. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Don't have to be called treat.
Right. Yep, exactly.
Well,
yep.
But yeah, that's a good one. And I think the idea of this rule came into effect, I want to say it was like around 2005. Maybe I think 2005 is when it came into effect. Before that, we could just not call our dogs. So you could let them sit there. And I've seen it happen where dogs sit there for an hour, the last hour of a hunt, just tree it out. Dog was leading the whole time, just so it wouldn't do anything else. It was going to stay there and wouldn't do anything else to accumulate any minus. Kind of was sitting in a good position, and handler would just leave him there. But the idea was to score dogs for what they do during a 2-hour hunt.
Yep.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's right.
So this rule, if applied correctly, works pretty well and does just that.
Yep.
All right, next one, Rule N, 6N. If handler fails to return to master hounds or the hunt director after cast becomes separated. And then after that, it says time period allotted is determined by the master hounds or the hunt director. So if you, if you cast becomes separated on the way to the woods or what have you, and in today's world we have phone numbers and cell phone numbers, and that's why it's always good to maybe exchange those or make sure that, and it doesn't happen as much anymore because of that. You usually contact somebody pretty quickly, but if all else fails, you've lost contact with your cast or whatever, that would be the thing to do. Would be go back to the master hounds, and you have no choice. But there again, that delay of cast does not apply here. The
That's right.
master hounds determines how much time they're going to allow them to come back. But
Probably going to be determining that off what the deadline is and how far
a
you
lot
got
of
to
things
go
like
and
that.
different things.
Exactly.
So, yep. Next here is Rule 6.0 for climb, and it tells us that handlers are going to be scratched for climbing or cutting trees or disturbing a place of refuge.
Mm-hmm.
So, honestly, this is another liability type issue. First off, you can't be climbing trees out there when you're on a UKC licensed cast. Second off, you can't be cutting trees and destroy. You're not sure where you're going to be hunting on. You could be hunting at a place where you don't want people cutting trees. You could be hunting on someone else's land. You're not even the guide. And I think you kind of some of the intent of this rule. Am I right?
Well, the cutting trees part got added since I've been here, and I know that came from a real situation, and I think it used to be, and you'd see it, and it probably still happens sometimes, but at one time, I know some hunters that used to carry little saws and little clippers and things like that to cut bushes and cut little trees down so they could get around a tree in the summertime to see it better to shine and things like that. And I remember one time I had a call from a very disgruntled farmer about that very thing, and we talk about liabilities. He wanted to take it to another level,
Mm.
and really, if you think about it, hey, leave their leave their trees
Respect the
alone. Yeah,
property.
respect the property. So and the climbing trees is just like you said, a liability, and it stinks sometimes. There used to be a place I used to go to that I loved to hunt, and it seemed every time I went there, the dogs treed on this tree right on the fence. If you climb up the fence, get up to the first fork of it, you will find there is a hole that you cannot see, but there's a hole in it. And oftentimes it would end up being a minus tree.
Mm.
And to the point where it got so frustrating that I just didn't hunt there anymore. But you wanted to climb up there and show the guys that, hey, there's a hole here. It's a den tree, but that you cannot see from the ground. But there again, it's a liability issue, and somebody gets hurt. You don't want to be the insurance, the one that the insurance company comes after. I'm telling you. And then disturbing a place of refuge is the other. Disturbing a place of refuge, I have gotten some different answers on that, and I only bring it up because it has come up. Well, how is that defined? And I think it's a little different in some or in some in different states. But I would probably, if anybody really wants to really take it further, maybe get with your DNR officers. And I even got some different answers in the state of Michigan until I went to I went straight up to the very top, and I just know in the state of Michigan it is considered disturbing when you actually take an object like a stick or a branch or something and actually poke the nest or something like that. As far as a nest is concerned, or uh, uh, take a stick inside and actually poke the raccoon. But as far as tapping on a
Right.
tree, getting a raccoon to look, that's not considered disturbing. But you just don't want to be. Sometimes the game just gets away. So if you want to try to poke it around to poke it to where you can see it, then that's disturbing. Sometimes you just got to leave. Hey, it's the game won this time.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, sometimes you might get some questions, and I've gotten it several times. There used to be a rule about squall time. You used to be able to squall after the first 2 minutes, I think. And in that rule, it told you after 2 minutes you could squall, shake vines and tap trees. And it's no longer in the rule book because now you can do it the entire duration of shine time. But that didn't change the fact that you can still tap trees and shake a vine here and there. You just got to be, you got to be cognizant of how far you go with that, and you're not knocking a nest out of a tree, or you're
Yeah.
not, digging a hole out, and just be like
Yeah.
you usually say, be reasonable.
We're not going to do like little Billy did, cutting down trees and smoking up a dead tree to get the coon out. We can't be doing that.
Hour hunt could go by pretty quick
Yeah.
if you go in there with a hatchet.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
All right.
no.
Next one here, Rule 6P tells us for handler will be scratched for intentionally killing coon or other game.
Yep.
That's pretty straightforward.
Straightforward intentionally, sometimes you can't help it if a dog catches one, and that doesn't happen that often, but you certainly can intentionally, and we have seen it where somebody maybe didn't see a raccoon in the tree and they intentionally killed one, or got one out to show somebody, and that usually doesn't end well. It doesn't matter what their reason was, so but yeah. There's other ways to deal with blind people. We talked about that. Sometimes you just don't see them, and sometimes I think sometimes we're being a little too critical of somebody that just doesn't see it, or sometimes it's a little bit like mushroom hunting. I do more squirrel hunting these days, and I can tell you those guys, those squirrel hunters, there's a knack for finding certain games, whether it's finding mushrooms or squirrels and even trees. You take some newcomers out coon hunting with you, you are going to find 10 out of 10 coons before your newbie finds them, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes just because somebody doesn't see it is not just maybe they really don't see it.
Yeah, there could be a squirrel in that bush behind you, and I probably wouldn't find it. But
Yeah.
but hey, I will say, and you talked about this. It's okay if you just don't see the coon sometimes. There obviously are situations where somebody just flat goes blind, and you said there's
Yep. Yep.
obviously karma is a thing and things like that. But there's also some situations where if a person could take a video, and we can't use video evidence to overturn calls and things like that. But if you could get a video of the situation happening and show us from the base of the tree where the dog is to the coon, and maybe get the person involved and things like that, there's been instances where people have been reprimanded for things like that.
Yep.
And hey, you may not be able to use a video to get calls overturned, but if somebody goes blind in the woods and they're showing poor sportsmanship and stuff like that, that's why we have a misconduct form for, because that's poor sportsmanship.
Yep. All right, another thing you can get scratched for searching tree before the start of shining time. I think we want to be careful with this. I think we can talk about this a little bit. Sometimes it happens when you're walking to your dog or what have you. You're not supposed to. There's a time allotted for search time.
Mm-hmm.
So in walking across the wood or across the field to your dog, and the dog's treated on the edge of the woods, you start shining time right away. There's two things that must got to happen before you can score a tree. That is, you have to handle the dog, number one, and number two, start shine time. So you don't start searching a tree walking across a field, to see if you can find it by the time you get there. That's a scratching offense to do that. But that's also not to be construed by somebody who just, sometimes what I'm talking about is sometimes you just happen to throw your light up there that is not intended for, you're not looking, so be reasonable about that as well.
Yeah.
But you also be reasonable about not doing that.
Yeah.
Don't throw your light up there, and oh, I didn't mean to, but when you really did, usually that's not that hard to figure out if what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you don't start until the judge tells you to start, and that's going to be after your dog's handled and he's started the shine time, he or she.
Very straightforward there.
Very straightforward.
Rule 6R. It's going to tell us that a handler will be scratched for failure to stay with the cast unless given permission to leave. It's talking about, you got a judge who's in charge of the cast here. You got a person who, for whatever reason, maybe they want to go handle their dog at a certain situation, or there's different situations, I guess, where a person could leave, or maybe they just flat get mad and want to take off to the truck or something, and they haven't signed the car or anything. In that situation, they'd be scratched as well. So there's different variables and situations that pop up in the woods that are not all popping up right now in my brain, but it is covered there in Rule 6R.
Yeah, stay with the cast, and there's another rule that it's the judge's responsibility to maintain a pace attainable by everybody. So yeah, you don't run away from the judge. Or matter of fact, you follow the judge. You walk with the judge. You don't walk away from him, and you stay with the cast.
Yep.
Unless given permission to leave. Next one, S, for encouraging, discouraging, or physically abusing a dog. So we talked about the physical abuse already in another part there. But here we're talking about encouraging or discouraging. So that's be like encouraging would be to come on, let's go, come on, or getting a dog to try to go get to hunt, or trying to walk him, to go hunting, or discouraging, like yelling at him, or maybe I don't know. There's different things, of trying to discourage a dog of doing something. There again, it can be a variety of different things. Whatever that might be. Hey, one thing that I will tell this, and I say it's a dumb thing, but it's old. So it's so old school, and so in the old days, a lot of guys used to train their dogs with their snap on their. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm saying it here with their
leash.
lead strap. Dog gets close or whatever. You hear a handler starting to snap this.
Yeah.
Guess what? That's a training technique that they've taught their dog. Don't come near me when I'm doing this. And that's okay. We all know what that is. That's the time has passed you by if you're still trying to argue. That's nothing.
Right.
Yeah, we know exactly what that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some things like that. That would be discouraging or manipulating your dog. Obviously physically abusing. Another one is the last sentence there. It says, praising a handled dog is not considered encouraging. And what that means is you can't, once you go to a tree and you handle your dog and he did a good job, you pet the dog up on the side. Hey, good job, Jackie. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's not considered encouraging. That's praising a dog.
Yeah.
So, and it's not hard. It's simple stuff there.
Rule 6T tells us that a handler is going to be scratched for use of scoring aids other than their light, a mechanical squaller, or a thermal imaging device. And it also goes on to say that laser pointer light is permitted, oftentimes on the newer lights, or I guess I should say belt lights, headlight, doesn't matter what it is. A lot of them have the laser pointer connection on there where they can point out the coon or maybe keep track of in what direction a dog's treating or that sort of thing. That's permitted. Obviously, you have your light to help you find the coon, the mechanical squaller, not some fancy battery operated or different kind of squaller that you can play different sounds on. Or, obviously now we have the thermal imaging device that has been allowed into it to help you help be as a scoring aid. So I think aid is an important word there. You don't score off of them. These are just aids that you use to score. You use your eyes to score, to score, but these are the aids to help you find it, your light, your squaller, and your thermal.
That's right. And then it goes on to say laser pointer as well, is permitted. And that's the laser pointer is just generally used to point out where it is, to show somebody else where it is to look.
Yep.
This is where I'm seeing it, and look right there, just to get it closer. But and some registries, I know they allow the use of mirrors or phones, taking pictures of this and that, and we have not allowed mirrors or phones for that reason. You would be scratched, if it was found that you took a picture of one, and then that's how you scored this raccoon. You took a picture, and no, that's going to be a scratching offense if that's how you used to score this. To score it.
And we've kind of talked about it, obviously it's not ideal and you kind of want to be better safe than sorry, but you got your hunting vest and maybe, obviously most people have their cell phone on them for whatever reason. Yeah. Maybe they use their dog or Pathfinder, or, you know, just in case they get separated, to have a phone call or something. Maybe even they have their mirror in a pocket that they didn't take out or something. Just merely having it isn't a scratching offense.
Right.
But then when you score, when it's found out that you scored using with that device, that's whenever you're in trouble.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, next one. Handler's dog will be scratched for rule violations by their spectators, and I think this is a good one here. And anytime spectators, we like to have spectators. Everybody's allowed to have up to 2 spectators per handler with them. But they are just spectators. Spectators sit on the sidelines. They don't, and they don't get involved. They don't get involved in any rules, scenarios, or anything like that, or influence the judges or the handlers in any way. And that does happen sometimes. And it happens. Oftentimes it happens, and there's no action taken. But that's what that means. It's that simple. It's that black and white. You don't get involved. And if they do, their handler is scratched.
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
simple.
You're the handler,
Yep.
you're liable for their actions.
You're
If you're a
just there to
spectator,
watch.
if you're a
Watch.
spectator, don't even put your handler in that situation.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
if you're a handler, you don't want your spectator putting you in that
That's right.
situation.
That's right.
If you're a judge, you don't have to put up with a spectator
Yeah.
acting like a handler. So give them a good stern warning. All right, Rule 6V here under handler.
Let me
Yeah,
while
go
we're
ahead.
talking about that, there's another rule in 10 under spectators. It says spectators may not be included in the majority required to score trees or enter discussions pertaining to the scoring of dogs. So that's enter discussions pertaining to the scoring of dogs. So if they enter them, they could influence somebody. And so that makes it pretty black and white there. Don't get involved in it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Next one here, and I see a definition here. This is for rule. This is under handler-related offenses, Rule 6V, and it says handler will be scratched if handler displays unsportsmanlike conduct, and that's where the asterisk is there, towards any individual on club grounds or during the hunt.
Yeah, and that asterisk, it tells you means to go to section 16 under definition. So unsportsmanlike conduct is defined as to include, but not limited to, trying to stir trouble, drinking, continuously argumentative, threatening or intimidating, or any actions that reflect negatively on the UKC or the host club.
Yeah, I think at this point, I've been on a lot of casts in the past 12 years or however long it's been that I've, been active in competition hunt in one capacity or another. And I can't think of a single time I've dealt with someone with unsportsmanlike conduct, but I know that it does happen. Obviously we field phone calls about it and you hear stories of it and things like that. If you're out there on a hunt, this is a hobby for a lot of people. I know it's a job for some. Everybody's out there to have a good time. And they're out there to figure out who has the best dog that night. A lot of people would put in a lot of time in the woods to work with their dogs and things. The last thing they want to put up with is some unsportsmanlike person with no respect to them or different things, or no respect for this sport that we have. And if somebody's out there, showing their hind end or in one way or the other, or constantly trying to stir up trouble in the cast or be argumentative, or Lord forbid they start threatening someone or wanting to fight someone, or even worse over a coon hunt that's going on, they need to go to the truck, and probably not only that, they need to have a formal misconduct filled out on them.
Needs to be reported. And I agree 100%. Hey, things don't always work out the way we want. And I think it depends on how some people can handle things like that better than others. Others just, I don't know, they can't take it too well when things aren't working out very well, or what have you, but we have rules and procedures in place, and we're going to be talking about more of that in this whole series as we go through the rule book, what some of those procedures are. But instead of getting all emotional and getting argumentative and things like that, let the procedures take place, follow those procedures, and leave it at that without getting bent out of shape. If you can do that, you're only helping yourself. And we see it so many times when even though you may be right, you took yourself right out of it because of your actions and how you reacted to something in an unsportsmanlike manner.
And it can take we say this about different things, but it can take a long time to build up a good reputation in this sport, in anything you do, but in this sport as well, it carries true. It only takes one bad time to kind of ruin your reputation and kind of get a bad name out there. So be cognizant of that when you're out there. It
can be, and oftentimes those that are kind of tend to be argumentative and kind of the kind that you don't like to draw because of the way they conduct themselves, can also sometimes be the nicest people in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And that's just unfortunate.
Oh.
You often somebody's true character and their demeanor really comes through when you're in the heat of competition like this. Might be easy for us to say, but I think we've also both been on that side of it and dealt with missing deadlines and getting scratched and for things we knew they should be scratched for and things we didn't agree with, but it doesn't give you a license just to go off on a person or conduct yourselves inappropriately. Follow the procedures if you don't agree, and don't take that other route, a bad route. All right, moving on here. So we Next is W. If scorecard lacks handler's signature or if event official cannot satisfactorily determine accurate score, dog or dogs affected will be scratched. Refer to Rule 12C if applicable. So 12C says this: any handler failing to sign the scorecard in the woods may have the opportunity to sign upon returning the scorecard to and in view of the master hounds or the hunt director. So this, and we're talking about the scratching rules for handler. If you didn't sign the scorecard, or if event or I'm going to be scratched if I didn't sign it. And I have the opportunity to do it in front of the hunt director or what have you, or the master hounds, but it needs to be signed. Or if they cannot satisfactorily determine the accurate score on the dogs, let's say, and the reason that got put in there, we used to have a rule that if there was a point value missing, then it didn't matter what it was, even if we could almost figure it out. That was your responsibility. And it should have a point value, should always have a point value. But that's that's what that refers to when it's talking about the official not satisfactorily determining the accurate score. An example may be this: we talked about in this series. We talked about at the end of the hunt time. If hunt time ends, those strike points are to be deleted at that point. Let's just say they aren't deleted. There's just nothing there. Doesn't have a point value on it. If the official can't satisfactorily figure out what that is for, that may not be a good example of one, but let's say you have a striking tree that has nothing on it. They should be able to, when you bring the scorecard, I should be able to look over everything and I should be able to figure up everything and get the exact same score as you do. But if you don't have point values on them and things like that, if it's not satisfactory, you know what? There's a reason that I may just have to scratch just sloppy work. And as a handler, I have no excuse because I need to sign the scorecard before I turn it in. And if there is any such thing, I should check over my scores or whatever before I hand it back to the judge. If there is any such thing, ask them to make sure it is clear. Look over those things before I sign it.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was going to say there. The signature on there. Let's just talk about what that means. It doesn't mean that you completed the cast or that you were in the hunt. That's not what the signature is for. What the signature is for is you're verifying that the scorecard that's being turned in to the master hounds or the event official is correct. Take a minute out of the time and have some respect for the hunt that you're in to look that thing over and make sure your scores are right and the other scores are right. It's kind of disheartening when you're at a major event and they don't have 30 seconds to make sure the scores are right. And yeah, that's what your signature's on there for. And man, we appreciate it when people do it right.
Yep, that's right. Last one. This is the third section here, though.
Yeah,
Talked about dog related and then handler related. Now this is other.
Yeah, this one I guess we could say is all encompassing, and this is Rule 6X, and this is just simply says the implied scratch. We added this to the rule book in the latest update in 2023. It's always been a thing. It's been a thing that's been written about in advisor columns before. I don't know, for some reason there was some discussion about it, so we brought it back up and we decided, man, we'll just put it straight in there and we'll give the definition of it. And the definition of implied scratch is there in parentheses, and it says for violating a stated rule when no specific penalty is noted. So basically, anytime the rule book in any section tells you to do something and you don't do it, or it tells you not to do something and you do it, and there's no penalty involved, maybe it's not in the minus section or the scratching section or what have you, you're scratched.
That's an implied scratch, and I think you can say, well, why do you need this? But I can tell you there, if we needed to include every situation that has ever happened, that there would need to be a rule for it, or it says you can't do it or this or that. If we can't, you don't want a rule book that has every unique situation that might come up. If you did, you would be looking at a lot of fine print and a lot larger rule book that is unnecessary. But that's what the implied scratch does. And it's just like you said, if this happened and it's not under the minus or the scratch column, then it is an implied scratch if it doesn't tell you what to do.
Yeah. That'd be a long podcast if we had to go through all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we finally made it through the ugly there, the Rule 6, the scratching section. We talked about all the things your dogs can do to get you scratched from the hunt, all the thing the handler can do to get you scratched from the hunt, including his Spectator, and then the implied scratch there at the end. Alan, I know we both have new Dogtra Pathfinder 2s. How are you liking yours so far?
I'm liking it. I've even had the opportunity now to use mine where I didn't have service, where I download the map of that area, and it works flawlessly. Love it.
I agree. I really like my Dogtra Pathfinder 2 as well. I've used it quite a bit the past few months. I really like the crystal clear maps. I like that it doesn't lose service very much, and I don't have many bad things to say about it at all. Dogtra Pathfinder 2, the official GPS collar partner of UKC. Thank you for listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. Be sure to give us a follow so you don't miss any of our new episodes or content.